What is going on, everybody? AHS Rules back again with another video, and we're here for another retro review. I said that I hoped to continue to do more and more retro reviews, and the more and more I sat around, I'm like, let's go ahead and do another one. Now, here's the thing about me. You give me enough time to plan and prepare for something, I go overboard with it. And I told y'all I had a lot of shows that I wanted to watch and review and talk about on the channel. And I have a whole page worth of them already wrote down, days wrote down. When talking about wrestling and wrestling in general, it's card subject to change, but in my opinion, and going on right now, I have several months worth of retro reviews planned, and this one today is the first in a trilogy of NXT takeovers that I will be going over. So today's review is of NXT Takeover Dallas. Legitimately just finished watching it 1 minute ago. So next week will be another takeover, and the week after will be another takeover. Point being, I wanted to get these done and out of the way. That way I could review No Way Out 2008, because I already said that I more than likely will review that and wanted to review a show with an Elimination Chamber, and it makes sense to do that on the week of the Elimination Chamber this year. Hopefully it's not too complicated and overblown, but you more than likely understand. So we got NXT Takeover Dallas to go over today. I've just been very nostalgic for NXT recently. It's very good timing to talk about NXT with the newly created NXT Vault channel, so that is fitting as well. So we got a takeover to go over today. Even though I've already said that 3 times, let's get right into it. And the good thing is last week with the Royal Rumble, I didn't have like the best like preview notes wrote down and like setting the tone notes wrote down, mainly because I did not want to talk about 2007 WWE. But this time around, I have a lot of notes. So much so that I have 2 different notebooks, so y'all might not mean much, but to me, it means something. So notebook number 1 has my pre-show notes. So this takeover was the first takeover WrestleMania weekend, the third one on the road, because the first one was TakeOver Brooklyn the previous year, SummerSlam weekend. Then they did TakeOver London at the end of the year. Point being, this TakeOver was WrestleMania weekend, WrestleMania 32 to be exact, in Dallas, and some WrestleMania 32 notes. Thing 1 of note to me, Sting winning the Hall of Fame that year. The main thing, WrestleMania related, this is technically the biggest WrestleMania of all time, depending on who you want to argue about that with. I am not the person for that, but the main thing that I take away from this Mania, injury-riddled as hell. If you could go and make this a video game and turn injuries off, you could have had an all-time Mania. But real life happens, and injuries happened all around. The guy I mentioned at the beginning, Sting, he didn't have to retire, but he chose to retire after an injury he received in 2015. And if that injury didn't happen, I think he would have competed at that year's Mania, in my opinion. Randy Orton was injured. John Cena was injured. Even though he appears on the show, he wasn't scheduled to appear or announced to appear, and it was his only appearance until June of that year. But probably the biggest injury is Seth Rollins, who was the previous WWE champion and was not even able to compete on the show. Overall, it's an okay Mania that went on for a bit too long and did not have a main event that fans wanted to see. Now, we're not going to just talk about WWE here. We're going to go to the other side of things, because this is kind of one of the first years that I was noticing WrestleMania weekend shows outside of WWE. And again, this is the first time that WWE did a show outside with TakeOver. But ROH and Evolve and other companies traditionally did shows WrestleMania weekend. Now, the thing with that is, a lot of times, ROH shows were taped for DVD/on-demand, and if there's a live version of it, live stream, it's very difficult to watch it because the feed sucks most of the time. But that year's ROH Supercard of Honor was a 2-night event with the Night 1 main event being the recently reunited Motor City Machine Guns taking on the Young Bucks, the Night 2 main event being Kyle O'Reilly and Adam Cole in a no-holds-barred match, and probably the most notable thing was the return of Colt Cabana, which set up a title match with him and Jay Lethal later on at Global Wars Chicago. Now, I recently spoke about Evolve. Shout out to Evolve for returning on Tubi, nonetheless, down the line. But the WWN Super Show that weekend saw Evolve's past versus its present, with it being the team of Johnny Gargano, TJP, and Kota Ibushi picking up the win in the main event. And I'll be talking about Kota Ibushi later, because he makes a cameo that I did not remember. And the last note is not proclaiming to this WrestleMania 32 weekend. It is about the year prior. And NXT actually did a house show that year, but it was not taped live. There is tape of it because I remember it being showcased on NXT TV. The main thing that I remember was Kevin Owens cutting a promo because he is injured at the time and still champion, so at least he made his appearance. But I looked up what the main matches were. Sasha Banks versus Charlotte Flair for the women's title, and the main event, Finn Balor versus Adrian Neville. So it was not taped live. There's definitely video footage of it. I talked about the NXT Vault. Maybe it gets vaulted at some point. Time will tell with that. But let's stop talking about non-takeover matches. Let's actually talk about takeover. And here we go. 5-match show. Starting off, the tag team titles on the line. The Revival versus American Alpha. And I more than likely will screw up Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder's name. You know what? Actually, I might not. I've gotten so used to calling them Dax and Cash that their names are so damn similar to their WWE names, but I don't think any mess-ups will happen. But hopefully you understand. As the first two legal men are Chad Gable and Scott Dawson. They start the match off back and forth until Jordan is tagged in and lands a dropkick. The Revival fake a tag to sneak attack Jordan. Another fake out happens later on with Gable being the target, but Jordan comes in to save the day with the two hitting stereo German suplexes. After it, Gable gets trapped in his opponent's corner, and then the Revival hit a clothesline powerbomb combo, but the clothesline doesn't really connect. The crowd chants. I kind of ignored it. Now, the real mess up, not technically, but the real mess up is that Dash goes for the pin while he's not the legal competitor, and so it kind of screws their whole plan up. Jordan tags back in, dealing with both opponents, and has to have Gable break up a pin after a Dash uppercut. Close pinfalls by Gable and Dawson happen after this, but they only get 2 counts. And then Jordan tags in, setting up the Grand Amplitude, and we get new tag team champions in the opening match. This is a great tag team rivalry in NXT. This is their first match, and it's the first tag team title run of the American Alpha. Pretty sure it's their only NXT title run, but they do hold the SmackDown tag titles. So a good matchup and kind of one of the first Revival/FTR matches that really put them on the map. It was a good showcase for both sides. And American Alpha is very much missed, but at least Chad Gable is doing well for himself as well. And maybe at one point we'll see Jason Jordan every so often, but not competing, obviously. So I mentioned Kota Ibushi earlier. He's in the crowd for this, and Corey Graves on commentary says that maybe he'll be in the Global Cruiserweight Series, which he was not. He was in the Cruiserweight Classic, which the Global Cruiserweight Series ended up changing into the Cruiserweight Classic. Some all-time bouts take place there, and I was extremely upset that Kota Ibushi and Zack Sabre Jr. did not make the finals of that tournament, but looking at it now, it's understandable, and I'm fairly certain they definitely had matches in New Japan. I was going to say they main evented Wrestle Kingdom. I don't think it was them. I think it was Kota Ibushi and Jay White. But point being, they went on to have matches in other companies. Now, I'm not going to talk about every backstage segment, but this one was funny as hell to me in hindsight. Asuka is training backstage with the striking coach. And the striking coach was Seth Petrozelli. Now, Seth Petrozelli is a former MMA fighter who was in the UFC. I believe he was on Tough Season 2. Do not quote me on that. But the main thing of Seth Petrozelli's fame is he faced Kimbo Slice in an MMA bout, and he won very quickly, and the company that put the bout together quickly closed shop because they put all their chips in Kimbo, and it kind of went away. And then other things happened that Seth Petrozelli said. Point being, there's several YouTube videos out there for it, but I just found it funny that he was here, and I realized the name. And I don't know many people with Seth Petrozelli's name that also has striking. You get the point. It's just a very obscure cameo. Now, we have Austin Aries versus Baron Corbin. Austin Aries' big NXT debut was interrupted by Baron Corbin when he attacked him because General William Regal would not give Corbin another number one contenders match shot, and he told Regal that he would regret it, and he did so by attacking Regal's newest signee. Now, I always liked Austin Aries. I understand why people aren't big Austin Aries fans, but I always liked Austin Aries, and the main thing, this is his first NXT bout, first WWE bout, and it kinda is a very forgettable run in the company, and it leads, one of the issues, I guess you could say, leads to his next storyline and next big match in NXT. He signed, and then they made a bigger signing that immediately overshadowed him, and then he got called up and was a part of 205 Live. And he challenged for the Cruiserweight title several times and did not win it. And then by the time they got to say, okay, what are we going to do with him next? He was already gone. So Austin Aries had an extremely weird run in WWE. But he went on to the indie scene to do other weird things. But we're here to talk about Austin Aries and Baron Corbin. Aries immediately attacks, which leads to a top rope splash to the outside. Once back in the ring, Corbin targets Aries' shoulder. Aries fights back, ending up with a tope to the outside again, but quickly gets hit with a deep six on the outside. Aries is barely able to make it in before the count of 10, which he does. It was a count of 9. And Aries reverses the end of days into a roll-up and picks up a victory. And what ends up being Baron Corbin's last NXT match for 7 years. That's what Wikipedia said. I'm glad they did the math for me. But you don't have to feel that bad for him because that weekend he would end up winning the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. Now we get the cherry on top, the main thing from this show. One of the main reasons I chose to watch this show, an all-time NXT match, Sami Zayn versus Shinsuke Nakamura. It is Sami Zayn's last match in NXT, and as a reward, they want to put him up against Shinsuke Nakamura, which is his first match in NXT. I remember at the time, thing one, I'm very upset that I did not mention this. I watched the show live. A lot of these shows that I probably review, I'll watch live, unless it's pre-2004-ish. Point being, I watched the show live. I had a Surge soda, which this is when Surge was re-released, and I'm mainly saying this now because I'd love if they would re-release it again. And a pack of fudge stripe cookies. Very much forward looking to the show. Like I said, this match was kinda the main thing to look forward to. And I will admit, I was very concerned on what Shinsuke Nakamura's theme song would be because his New Japan one was great. And I'll give WWE credit. They gave him a great entrance song as well. But to start the match off, both guys admire the crowd who give back and forth chants, leading to a back and forth start between both men, and both men taunt one another. Nakamura speeds this up after landing some kicks, and Zayn lands some elbows. Nakamura lands a pair of knees off of the apron and more in the ring. Zayn retaliates with a dive to the outside. Zayn is hit with some more knees and reverses it into a Michinoku driver. Then both go back and forth with elbows. Nakamura reverses a clothesline with an armbar, with Zayn later applying a Koji clutch. Nakamura moves out of the way of a haluva kick, very similar to CM Punk this past week on Raw, but Zayn is able to retaliate and hit a blue thunderbomb for a close 2 count. Then Zayn goes for his signature outside DDT, which has been a while since I think he has hit it, but maybe he should not have went for it in this match because Nakamura catches him with a knee. And then back in the ring, Nakamura hits a pair of Kinshasas to win the match. And this was a great match nonetheless. And Sami Zayn would go on to the main roster and have a match at that year's WrestleMania in the opener, Intercontinental title ladder match. And Nakamura would spend another year in NXT, becoming a multiple-time NXT champion. and have a overall... He's had a good run in WWE. Now, he probably should have done more. That is the point. That is a point that you can say about Nakamura, but it hasn't been a bad run. It has not been a bad run. So we'll more than likely cover some of it down the line. But a great matchup, nonetheless. As now, we have 2 title matches left. This first one being a women's title match, Bayley versus Asuka. Bayley won the women's championship at NXT Takeover Brooklyn in one of my favorite women's matches of all time. Asuka soon debuted in NXT after and started a dominant winning streak. So it was the top 2 women's competitors in NXT competing for the women's championship. We got a battle of one-upsmanship to start. One-upsman womanship. I don't really know. I tried to make a pun out of it. I couldn't do it, but I said both. One-upsmanship, one-upsman womanship, however the hell you want to say it. But both miss on some close drop kicks to start the match. Bayley keeps the attack going after a series of corner elbows and even hits a Frankensteiner. Bayley's even hits a Hurricane Rana onto the outside. Asuka starts back with a series of kicks. Bayley applies a knee bar, and then Asuka applies an arm bar. Bayley goes for the Bayley to belly, but is caught with a spinning kick. Then the Asuka lock is applied in the center of the ring, and the more Bayley tries to fight out of it, the deeper the hold is, and she passes out. And to the shock of the crowd, Asuka wins and starts an historic women's title run. Now, I didn't want to fact check, and I also don't want to really discredit the historic Asuka women's title run, but I think Mandy Rose might have had a longer title run. But if not, ignore that last statement. And then these 2 would rematch at NXT Takeover Brooklyn 2, and that would end up being Bayley's last match in NXT. And the time of recording, she's back in NXT trying to get the women's championship from Julia, but is also dealing with Roxanne Perez. So some perfect timing there, I guess I could say. So now we have our main event match, NXT title match, Finn Balor versus Samoa Joe 2, a rematch of the previous TakeOver main event. But before that match starts, this is during the... I don't want to say it's the first time that this happened, but it's definitely one of the first times that we would get to the newest signee / free agent target invited in the crowd, and they get spotlighted. We even had it earlier in the show with Kota Ibushi, but this one was a bit shocking, as it was Bobby Roode. Now, I had stopped watching TNA at this point, and it was not, really my fault, because at the beginning of 2016, they moved to Pop, and I did not have the Pop channel. So from 2016 to the beginning of 2018, my TNA knowledge is not as fresh, because I didn't have a way to watch it until they moved to Twitch. But the funny thing here is not even really that funny. But the thing here is that Bobby Roode's TNA tag partner, James Storm, was in NXT at the end of 2015, and then was like, you know what, I'm going to go back to TNA, and we're going to reunite Beer Money. So him and Bobby Roode reunited Beer Money, probably made a couple of dollars off of the t-shirt sales, and the Beer Money reunion does not last that long, because Bobby Roode comes to NXT several months later, and it's just the timing of it all is a bit, like I said, it's not as funny, but y'all know my saying on the damn channel, behind every joke's a little bit of truth. So there's some funniness to this. Now, there are 2 things I remember about this match going in. Thing 1, Finn Balor dressed up as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, this is a botch on my end, because I do not feel like getting up and getting it. But I have the Elite figure of it, and I plan on being like, here it is. I completely forgot it. This also was in WWE 2K17 as his demon attire. And thing 2 that is mostly remembered about this match is we get an immediate attack from Finn Balor, and Samoa Joe gets busted above the eye. And this is during the time period where there's even a little bit of blood. They got to stop the match and try to take care of the wound, which I understand. But I thought it then, and I think it now. There's nothing really that would have changed my mind. There's one wrestler that could probably tolerate it, it's Samoa Joe. So most of this match is move, break, because the referee and the doctors have to tend to Samoa Joe's blood. But if you can get away from that happening and the crowd reacting to them doing it, we got a pretty good match. So, again, we get an immediate attack from Finn that leads to Joe bleeding, but this does not stop a Balor dive to the outside, leading to the two brawling out there some more. Joe later hits his own dive to the outside, with them, again, taking a break because they got to tend to Joe's wound. And once Joe gets back in the ring, he's pissed. He wants to keep the damage going, but he gets slowed down at some points. But he's able to hit a Uranagi and a pair of boots in the corner. Balor fights back with some chops and a corner boot. Joe hits a powerbomb, turns it into a Boston Crab, and then later a crossface in the center of the ring. Balor turns it into a foot stomp, but is stopped from hitting one off of the top rope. This puts him in perfect position for a muscle buster, but it only gets a 2 count. We get a series of elbows, and this leads to a Pele kick. And then he goes for the corner drop kick and coup de grace, but that is not enough to keep Samoa Joe down as he applies the Koji clutch, but Finn pushes off of the turnbuckles to turn it into a pin and wins the matchup and is 2-up on Samoa Joe because he beat him in the previous TakeOver main event and he won in this one. Like I said, at the time, I didn't really enjoy the match because the only thing I remembered was them having to stop Joe from bleeding. Looking back on it now, it's still a good match. I think their previous match was better. And the cage match was kind of, I'm not going to say it was bad. I just don't really remember it, if I just want to be honest. But, you know, overall, a great show nonetheless. And takeovers would continue to grow and grow more and more after this. Now, I will say, I'm going back and forth on what the next review will be. It will be a NXT Takeover from 2017. Now, I'm going back and forth on if it's going to be Takeover Brooklyn 3 or Takeover War Games. Both are great shows nonetheless. If I had to pick and tell y'all what y'all are going to see me review next week, it will be Takeover Brooklyn 3. Now, I'm going to give y'all a sneak peek, and if you could see it, you could see it, but here's kind of a rough draft of the retro review schedule, and I'm glad that I get to check one of them off of the board now. So, hopefully, I'll see y'all down the line. I do appreciate y'all for watching this video. Leave a like. If you want to leave a comment, that's fine as well. But hopefully you stay safe. Again, hopefully you enjoy the video as well, and I'll see you in the next one, because I'm out for now. Goodbye.